Hello, TelecomTV here. I'm Martin Warwick and I'm talking with Michael Brenner of ClearPath Networks. What is now at the top of your agenda in tray, as it were, as far as NFV development is concerned?
So one of the things that is on the top of my agenda is to try to coalesce efforts across the industry, not just at NFV, but a number of different other SDOs and open source communities in trying to make an effort to harmonize different information and data modeling around the industry that may have an impact on NFV.
Just tell us briefly, Michael, what information and data modeling actually is, what it does, why it's important, and then let's move on to the changes that are going to be made.
So information modeling is a way to conceptualize a problem space, describing how things should be looked in an abstract form. And in that sense, NFV is developing mainly specs around the NFV for the NFV information model for virtual network functions and network services. The data modeling is a little bit different. It's a little bit more down to earth because it's supposed to take an information model and transform it into the data representation that can be then actuated into implementations. The problem with the industry is that not only is it fragmented around the different information models, here comes NFV that is something new, but also there is not a good transition from information model to data modeling. So even between information model and data model, there is a fragmentation.
That explains what it is. What differences are you trying to effect or bring about now?
So one of the things that we are trying to do immediately is to identify different touch points between those information models so that we start increasingly addressing some of the issues. And we don't want to try to boil the ocean, sort of trying to make a universal information model top-down, because that could take years, but identifying specific problems between methodology, terminology, and boundaries between information models that we can address.
Have you isolated those? Do you know what they are?
Right, so we have isolated some. We have things going on at NFV that focuses mainly on the NFV information model, but then there is a service model, that the focus of service model being mainly in the TM forum. Then there is also the application view, which the focus of that is in 3GPP, and then there is the network resource view, and the focus of that is ONF and MEF and so on. So there is already an informal activity, let's say, a tiger team that has been put together with subject matter experts working in identifying those touch points and trying to come up with solutions to defragment this domain. So
when you defragment, as you say, and it's done, how are you going to bring the changes in the information and the data modeling to implementation for the user base, which is what it's all about in the end?
So the next thing is the transition should be from information model to data models. So in that space, there is a lot of activity already going on in open source and other places like ONF, where they build a lot of tooling around taking UML developed information model and transform them automatically into data model based on Yang.
So you have this not a standard, you have this new basis for information and data modeling. What happens immediately after that?
So now you have transformed information models to data models. Now data models are things that you can immediately implement. There are tools in the industry. One example is a tool developed by a colleague of mine. It's called YangForge, that takes a data schema developed in Yang, so the result of the UML translation into the Yang data schema, and can create a runtime model including all the APIs, the RESTful APIs exposed to the next component. So now once you have two components that understand the same data model, then they can have an intelligent conversation over those APIs.
Final question to you then. The end result of this, as far as a customer, an end user, a service provider is concerned, will be what?
The end result of that will be increased service agility and reduced operational expenses.
very plain. It sounds very straightforward. I'm sure it isn't. Michael Brenner, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.